The desk clerk looked at me with the particular expression of someone who had delivered bad news before, and had never quite made peace with it. Not apologetic exactly, more resigned, like she already knew how the next 2 minutes were going to go and had decided to just get through them professionally. "I'm so sorry," she said, tapping at the keyboard. "It appears there's been a change to your reservation." Sasha stood beside me at the front desk of the Vintage House Hotel, with her weekend bag on one shoulder, and the specific stillness she uses when she's either completely unbothered or working very hard to appear that way. After 6 years, I could usually tell the difference. That evening, I wasn't paying close enough attention. "What kind of change?" I asked. The clerk glanced at the screen once more. "You're confirmed for one room, a king." She said it the way you'd read a weather forecast, factually without taking personal responsibility for the content. I turned slowly towards Sasha. She looked back at me with calm, open eyes. "Huh," she said. That's impossible. There must be a mistake." Not even the slightly exaggerated laugh people use in public when they're trying not to come apart. Just one syllable. Like I'd told her that the drive had taken longer than expected. I stared at her. "That's it, just Evan." She said my name the way people say relax when they can't actually say relax. "We've been in the car since 10 this morning." "That doesn't explain anything." The clerk jumped in before we could get going in earnest. She looked like she had experience interrupting people. "I wish I could rebook you, but the whole town is completely full this weekend. There's a food and wine festival and 2 weddings at other properties." Sasha nodded like this was unfortunate but manageable. I was still stuck on the central fact. "I booked 2 queens," I said. "I know," Sasha said. The clerk turned the screen slightly toward us. "The notes show a room preference update. King, no smoking, upper floor." Sasha's hand tightened briefly on the strap of her bag. Just for a second I saw it. I didn't know what to do with it yet. "There must have been a glitch," she said pleasantly. The clerk handed over 2 key cards with the expression of someone who had done her part and was now professionally done with us. "Breakfast is included. Dining room opens at 7:30. You're in room 14, second floor." I took the cards. Sasha didn't move to take them. We walked toward the staircase without talking. Sasha and I had been best friends for 6 years. We could talk through anything. Bad traffic on the 401, the kind of Canadian winter that starts to feel personal. Her brother being the difficult kind of charming. My job situation the year the firm restructured. Silence between us usually meant one of 2 things. Someone was very tired, or someone was holding something back. At the foot of the stairs I said, "I specifically remember booking 2 queens." "I know," she said again. "That's a very calm thing to keep saying." "I'm a very calm person. You once argued with a parking enforcement officer for 11 minutes over a ticket that was $15. She started up the stairs. I maintain that was about principle. This was how it worked with us. Something went sideways and we talked sideways around it until it stopped feeling like a problem. It had been working for 6 years. We met at an industry mixer in the distillery district when I was 26, and she was 24, and neither of us wanted to be there. She was an architect. I worked in urban development, which meant we ended up at the same events just often enough to keep running into each other. The third time it happened, a rooftop thing for a firm I barely knew. She found me by the bar and said, "You look exactly as uncomfortable as I feel. Should we just leave at the same time so it looks like we had somewhere to be?" We got tacos from a cart on King Street and talked for 2 hours about nothing in particular. After that she was just part of my life. Not gradually, or at least not in a way I tracked. She was simply the person I told things to first. My sister had a theory about us that she shared approximately every 4 months whether I asked for it or not. The theory was that we were both being cowards, and that the universe was eventually going to run out of patience. I found this very easy to dismiss when Sasha wasn't standing 2 feet away from me in a hotel room with 1 bed. But here we were. Room 14 was at the end of a carpeted hallway that smelled like old wood and dried flowers. In a nice way, not a strange one. The Vintage House was that kind of place. Heritage building, exposed beams, the sort of crown molding that people drove 2 hours from Toronto to look at while eating charcuterie. Sasha's brother Nolan had chosen it specifically because his fiancée Caitlin loved anything with a historical plaque. I unlocked the door and understood immediately that the hotel had not been ambivalent about the room type. 1 king bed, white linen, headboard against the wall. A window seat looking out over the garden. A writing desk in the corner and 1 small armchair that was very obviously decorative and not something anyone was meant to sleep in. Sasha walked in behind me and stopped. I pointed at the armchair. That is not a sleeping chair. No, she agreed. That's a chair for putting on your shoes and feeling vaguely judged by. It has strong opinions about posture. She dropped her bag on the luggage stand and started digging through it without looking at me. We share the bed, we're adults, it's fine. You sound very prepared for this outcome. I sound tired. She pulled out her phone charger. I'm going to text Nolan that we got in. Tell him the hotel owes him an explanation. He'll offer you his couch, but his rental has 2 bedrooms and his future mother-in-law is in one of them. Sasha looked at me. I love this room. And for a moment it was almost normal. She smiled and I felt the tension ease about 30% and I thought, okay, we can do this. 6 years of friendship. We've slept in worse situations. We're reasonable people. Then my phone buzzed. I assumed it was my sister. She'd been sending increasingly pointed messages since I left Toronto, because she thought it was hilarious that I was driving to Niagara-on-the-Lake for a weekend with my, and I'm quoting directly, technically not girlfriend. But when I opened the notification, it wasn't my sister. It was the hotel app. I'd installed it when I made the reservation, because they had something about parking confirmations and I'd forgotten about it entirely since. Reservation update, room preference modified. I opened it without thinking. Dates, confirmation number, names. Then I saw the modification history. Room type, changed from deluxe double queen to premium king, requested by Sasha Mehta. My thumb stopped. The room got very quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't actually quiet. The old building settling, the garden outside, a door somewhere down the hall, but felt like silence because everything else had suddenly gotten louder in a way I couldn't explain. Sasha was still facing the other direction. She was folding her scarf over the luggage stand, with the careful focus of someone who was managing their own breathing. I looked at the screen one more time, not because I thought I'd misread it. Sasha! She looked over her shoulder. I held up the phone so she could see the screen. She went still. Not the easy, collected stillness from the lobby. Something different. She looked at the phone, then at the floor, then at some middle distance that didn't have anything in it. That's your name on the screen, I said. She didn't answer. Sasha, Queeter, did you change the reservation? She pressed her lips together, then yes. I set my phone face down on the writing desk, not hard, just down. When? Before we left. I looked out the window. The garden was full of string lights, and the last of the October maples, all that dark orange and red, and it would have been beautiful if I could have looked at it properly. So there was no glitch. No. No system error. There's always some kind of system involved, she said, then caught herself. Sorry, that was a bad. Yeah, I turned around. What were you thinking? Sasha unfolded her arms, which she'd crossed without seeming to notice. I was thinking, she said carefully, that you almost didn't come. I always come. You said maybe we should skip it. When we were stuck on the Gardiner. I was complaining about traffic. I complain about traffic between Yonge and Spadina. I know. She looked down. But you said it, and then I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if you'd actually meant it? What if I'd laughed and said, yeah, let's just bail, and we'd turned around and gone home and gotten dinner somewhere and called the whole thing a long day? That's not. We're very good at almost things. She looked at me then, and her voice didn't waver, but her eyes were doing something careful. We're very good at getting right up to the edge of something, and then finding the comfortable version instead. I didn't answer. The armchair sat in its corner, useless, exactly as predicted. Another room would have been easy, she said. Separate beds, separate space, the whole weekend managed and polite and over by Sunday, and we'd drive back and everything would be the same as it was. And I kept thinking. She stopped, took a breath. I'm tired of easy exits. You could have just talked to me. Something shifted in her expression. Not quite hurt, but close enough. You could have just noticed. I almost said there was nothing to notice. But that would have been the comfortable version of the truth, and we'd apparently run out of those. Because I had noticed. I noticed that I saved things all week to tell her. Not work things. Small things. A sign I'd seen on Bloor Street that she would have laughed at. A podcast clip about something she'd mentioned wanting to look into. I noticed that when she wore my old gray Henley to a bonfire at a friend's place last August, I had to look somewhere else for a while and then pretend I hadn't. I noticed that when a date I went on in September felt like a performance review for a job I hadn't applied for. I'd called all of it friendship because friendship had room for all of it without the category changing. It was a very convenient category. I noticed, I said. She looked at me. I just didn't know what to call it. That wasn't going to change everything. Sasha sat down on the edge of the bed. She put both hands flat on her knees like she was grounding herself. I wasn't trying to force anything, I need you to know that. I wasn't trying to engineer some big moment where you'd have no choice. I know. I just thought, if there was nowhere comfortable to retreat to, maybe we'd stop retreating. The frustration I'd had somewhere in my chest didn't have a clean place to go. Because she wasn't wrong. She'd handled this badly, unilaterally, without telling me, in a way that made me feel like the last person in the room to understand what was happening. But she was also just trying not to lose something we'd been quietly building for 6 years, without either of us putting a name to it. I sat down on the other end of the bed. For a minute, neither of us said anything. Outside, someone in the garden laughed. The string lights swayed slightly in the wind coming off the lake. When did it stop being just friendship for you? I asked. Not accusatory, I just needed to know. Sasha thought about it honestly. There's a moment I keep coming back to. You were supposed to pick me up for Nolan's birthday thing last year. Your truck wouldn't start. You called me, told me you'd Uber, totally casual. And I drove to your building anyway. Didn't even think about it, just went. She shook her head. I was sitting in my car outside your place waiting for you to come down. And I thought, I didn't even have to decide to do this, I just came. I remembered that. I remembered coming out of the elevator and seeing her car at the curb and feeling something I'd immediately tucked away somewhere. I'd already called you, I said. I know. She looked at me sideways, that's sort of the whole thing. I rubbed my face, for me it was last February, the ice storm. The bad one. Power out for 3 days. You showed up with groceries, your portable charger, and extremely strong opinions about what we were going to watch on your phone. She made a small sound, almost a laugh. At some point on the second night, I woke up around 2 in the morning and you were asleep on the other end of the couch, and I thought, I don't want anyone else here right now, specifically. Not just company. I looked at the window, and then I thought about what I'd do with that. And I decided to do nothing with it, and I went back to sleep. That's very you, she said quietly. Yeah, I said, I know. The armchair in the corner continued to contribute absolutely nothing. After a while I said, we're not doing anything tonight because of this room. She looked at me. I mean it. I don't want whatever this is to happen because of hotel furniture. We're going to sleep. We're going to go to your brother's thing tomorrow. And then we're going to talk about this like two people who are actually capable of a real conversation. Something in her shoulders came down about an inch. Okay. Okay? Yes. And some of the fear in her face went somewhere quieter. Okay. Good. She stood up and started pulling decorative throw pillows from the stack against the headboard. Pillow border, she said. Obviously, I said, and she handed me 3 without being asked. We built it down the middle of the bed carefully, like two people who understood it wasn't really about the pillows. Neither of us slept much. Somewhere around 2 in the morning, I heard her shift and then quietly into the dark. Are you awake? No, I said. She laughed into her pillow, soft, tired, something warm underneath it, and the room felt like less of an impossible situation. By morning, the pillows were still there, but they didn't feel like a wall anymore. They felt like evidence that we'd both meant what we said. Getting ready was strange. She stood at the mirror fixing an earring while I sat on the bed tying my shoes, and neither of us was doing either of those things particularly well. She'd retouched the same earring 4 times. I'd tied the same shoe twice. You're being weird, she said to the mirror. You've been adjusting that earring since we woke up. It's a new clasp. It's a hoop. She turned around. You are also being weird. I picked up my keycard. Walk down when you're ready. Normal, she said, pointed at me. Completely. We go in, we say hello, we eat breakfast, we do not make anyone's morning into a story, they repeat at Thanksgiving. Agreed. Perfect. We both stood there. After you, I said. She narrowed her eyes, quared, but she opened the door. The dining room was already full when we got downstairs. Sasha's family operated at a certain volume. Her mother Donna had claimed a table by the window and was already redistributing things from the breadbasket with quiet authority. Nolan and Caitlin sat across from her, glowing in that particular way of people who had just made a big decision and were still slightly surprised they'd made it. Caitlin kept touching her ring, not ostentatiously, just checking. Sasha's Aunt Gwen was at the end of the table with a coffee cup, and the expression of someone who had spent decades observing people, and had formed very strong conclusions. Donna waved us over. There they are. Nolan looked up, looked at us, and then looked very deliberately back down at his menu, with the controlled expression of a man who had decided not to say anything yet, and was working hard on it. We crossed the room toward the table, moving together the way we apparently moved without deciding to. Sasha's cousin Britta stopped mid-sentence. Gwen looked up from her coffee. She looked at Sasha, then at me, then back at Sasha. "Oh good," she said, finally. Sasha closed her eyes for exactly 2 seconds. "Gwen." "I'm eating toast," Gwen said. "I'm not doing a single thing." Britta covered her mouth with her napkin. Nolan became very interested in the wine list, which wasn't open because it was 9 in the morning. I sat down next to Sasha because sitting anywhere else would have required a formal explanation I didn't have prepared. She leaned toward me and whispered, "Do not react." "I'm reacting internally." "Keep it there." Donna, to her credit, asked about the drive and whether we'd had any trouble with weekend traffic on the QEW. Unfortunately, Sasha and I both answered at exactly the same moment. "Fine," I said. "Long," Sasha said. Britta made a sound into her orange juice. Caitlin smiled at her plate. Gwen lifted her coffee cup toward me. "You look tired." "I feel great," I said. "No, you don't." Sasha stared at her scrambled eggs with the focus of someone considering an alternate life. "He's fine, Gwen," Donna said pleasantly. "I didn't say he wasn't. I said he looks tired. That's an observation. Sasha looks tired too, actually. Different kind." "Different how?" Sasha said flatly. "The kind from thinking too hard." Gwen helped herself to a piece of Nolan's toast without asking him. "You know the kind. When something's been turning around in your head for a while." "I'm thinking about breakfast." "Of course you are." Nolan coughed. Caitlin took a very focused sip of water. "The grounds are absolutely beautiful," Donna said brightly to everyone. "I walked out this morning at 7 and the light on the vineyard was just lovely," Sasha said, at a speed that accidentally answered 3 unasked questions. Britta lost the battle with her napkin entirely. I drank my coffee and tried to look like a man who had slept normally, and had no recent history of confessing things at 11 o'clock on the edge of a hotel bed. I think I mostly succeeded. Breakfast spread out into the comfortable chaos of Sasha's family being in one room. Nolan's proposal story getting slightly longer with every retelling, Caitlin's mother calling twice from Calgary with venue suggestions, Donna quietly rearranging the centerpiece. Sasha translated and smoothed and laughed at exactly the right moments. And I watched her do it and thought about every time I'd watched her do exactly this, and had found a reason not to understand why I always wanted to be in the same room. After the meal, the group drifted out toward the winery's back terrace and the vineyard paths that ran along the water. Britta found me at the coffee station while Sasha was helping Caitlin with something about the afternoon schedule. "So," Britta said. "No," I said. "I didn't say anything. You were going to." She had Sasha's smile, which was a thing I probably shouldn't have cataloged. She turned down a work contract in Vancouver last spring. Said the timing was wrong. I didn't know that. "No, you wouldn't. It wasn't something she mentioned." Britta shrugged. "I just thought it was interesting, the way people decide their timing." Sasha appeared at my elbow and looked at Britta with the expression she usually reserved for missed deadlines. "What are we discussing?" "Your career choices," Britta said pleasantly and walked away. Sasha watched her go, then without looking at me, "What did she tell you?" "Vancouver," I said. She was quiet. The timing was genuinely bad. "Okay. Yvonne." I didn't say anything. "You were about to." I looked at her. "You didn't mention it at the time." She watched the vineyard through the terrace glass, the morning light doing something good to the rose and the gray water beyond. "Because you would have told me to go." "Yeah," I said, "I would have." "I know." She finally turned and met my eyes. Which is sort of the whole thing, isn't it? Later I found a quiet section of the outer railing away from most people. The lake was flat and gray-green, and the far shore barely visible through the October haze. Behind me, Nolan was telling a story that involved sound effects. Caitlin's laugh carried over everything else. I heard footsteps on the stone. Sasha came up beside me with her jacket on against the water air, hands in her pockets, hair moving slightly. We stood there for a moment, just looking at the lake. Then she said, "Was I wrong to do it?" I looked at her. She was watching the water, but there was nothing casual about the question. "The room," she said. "I know I crossed a line. I know I should have said something instead of doing something. I know that." She finally looked at me. "But do you wish it hadn't happened?" I thought about it honestly. About the drive home I'd been imagining all morning. Back in Toronto, parking in my building, the elevator goodbye we always did. Returning to the same comfortable version of everything. "No," I said. She let out a breath. "It was a genuinely chaotic decision," I said, for the record. "Noted. My sister is going to think it's hilarious when she finds out." "No one is finding out. She finds everything out eventually." Sasha laughed, quiet, tired, something warmer underneath. Then she looked at me and I could see the question still there in her face. Not the room question, the larger one. "Where does that leave us?" she asked. I turned toward her. She was watching me with that careful expression. The one that was trying hard not to hope too obviously. "It leaves us choosing this," I said. "Actually choosing it, not because the hotel backed us into a corner, not because your aunt said something pointed over eggs, because we decide to." She looked at the railing between us. "That's different from what we've been doing." "It is." "Okay." She said it quietly like she was trying the word out and it fit. "Okay." I held out my hand. She looked at it, then at me. I could see exactly what she was thinking, that we'd touched before, of course, but never like this, never without an excuse attached. She put her hand in mine. Her fingers were cold from the morning air, mine closed around them. We didn't say anything. The lake kept doing what it was doing. Someone inside laughed at something. Nolan called my name once from across the terrace. And when I turned, he was looking at us with an expression he immediately tried to make neutral. He didn't quite get there. Sasha said, very quietly, "We could have done this months ago." "Probably. Maybe longer." "Don't push it," I said. She laughed. And then I was laughing too, both of us at the railing in the October light with our hands joined. And it felt strange and entirely familiar at exactly the same time. Like something we'd already been doing for years, just without our hands catching up to it. She leaned her shoulder into mine, gently, like checking that it was allowed. It was. We stayed until Donna came to find us for the afternoon photographs. When we turned to go back inside, Sasha held my hand for a few more seconds, just for herself. Before she let it go, smoothed her jacket and walked ahead of me through the glass doors. Gwen was watching from a chair by the fireplace. She lifted her coffee cup at me, just slightly, like a woman who had been right about something for a very long time. I pretended not to see it. Sasha looked back at me. "Don't. I'm not doing anything. You're encouraging her with your face." "I'm not making any particular face." "You are. Stop." The rest of the afternoon moved the way those things do. Photos by the vineyard fence. Nolan getting quietly emotional and covering it badly. Caitlin's mother finally making it through on video and crying in a way that made everyone else start going a little. Sasha straightened Nolan's collar before the group photograph without mentioning it. He caught her eye, and something passed between them that had nothing to do with the weekend. I held her jacket when she needed both hands free. She saved me a seat without being asked. We didn't announce anything or make it into something the whole table had to absorb. But we also stopped doing the careful choreography, that exact, practiced spacing, the deliberate not reaching, the management of appearances. When we stood together for the group photo, her shoulder was against my arm. Neither of us moved away. On the way back up to the room that night, she said, "We should tell people, at some point. My sister's going to say she knew." She did know. I know, but she doesn't need the satisfaction on a timeline she didn't set. 2 weeks, Sasha said. She was smiling at the hallway carpet. And we give them the version where we had a mature, thoughtful conversation, and arrived at this naturally like two emotionally evolved adults. That version doesn't sound like us at all. That's exactly why it's the one we tell. I laughed. She bumped her shoulder into mine in the hallway outside room 14, and I thought about 6 years of almost things and easy zixt, and the long, careful habit of naming something wrong because the right name felt too large. In the morning, we packed quietly. Housekeeping had been through. The bed was neatly made. The armchair sat in its corner, small and decorative and unmoved. I pointed at it while she zipped her bag. Contributed nothing. It knew its limits, she said. Honestly, that's a respectable quality. Unlike the room. She picked up her bag. The room did exactly what it needed to do. I looked at her. I guess it did. She stopped in the doorway and looked back at me. And for a second I saw all of it at once. Every parking lot conversation, every late phone call, every time one of us had driven somewhere without being asked because the other person needed someone there. Standing in the doorway of a hotel room we'd argued about and slept badly in, and probably needed more than either of us had admitted. "Let's go," she said. The drive back on the QEW was clear. Sasha was in the passenger seat with her feet tucked under her, holding a double-double from the Tim Hortons at the 50 Road exit, the one we always stopped at on the way back from anywhere in Niagara. She fell asleep somewhere around Oakville, with her head turned toward the window. I kept both hands on the wheel. She woke up outside Mississauga, yawned, looked out at the highway for a moment. Then she reached across the center console without looking. Her hand found mine on the gear shift. I held it. No comment, no joke to make it smaller. She squeezed once and then relaxed, her hand warm against mine, and I drove the rest of the way into the city like that, past the gardener, up through the streets, the skyline filling the windshield the way it always did coming home, and for the first time in 6 years, I didn't feel the need to call it something it wasn't. 3 weeks later we drove back to Niagara-on-the-Lake, not for a wedding or a family obligation or anyone else's reason, just the two of us one weekend, because we wanted to go back and do it right. Without delays, without anything to hide behind, without one of us quietly rewriting the reservation to force the conversation we should have been having all along. The same clerk was at the front desk when we arrived. She pulled up the booking with a smile. "Room preference? We have a lovely double queen available, and our premium king on the upper floor." Sasha glanced at me. Not the managed, careful calm of the first time. Just a look, easy and warm and a little amused. The way she looks when she already knows exactly what she's going to say. She turned back to the clerk. "King," she said, "please."